theyeshiva.net.
Zog the Heilige Gemara. Pesachim Kuf Daled Amud Beis. Kuf Daled Amud Beis. Mamash the top line. The top line, first line. V'les Hilchas Kavasei Ula. So let's recall the discussion. The Gemara has been discussing here the right nusach for Havdalah, the text for Havdalah. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, whether you say 3 Havdalahs, whether you say 7 Havdalahs, but you always have to quote the Havdalahs that are explicitly articulated in the Tanakh. And that's why we say Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol, Parshas Shmini, ben Or L'Choshech, Parshas Bereshis, ben Yisrael La'amim, right? Also Va'avdil Eschem, also in Vayikra Va'avdil Eschem and Ha'amim Li Yisli, I think Achrei Kedoshim. And ben Yoim HaShvi L'Sheshis Ma'amaisa, which is not a pasuk, but that's just a preparation for the end of the bracha. There's 3 Havdalahs that we say, L'Halacha, Kodesh L'Chol, Or L'Choshech, Yisrael La'amim. And then we finish Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol, which is also the pasuk that Lahavdil ben HaKodesh ubein HaChor. That was the Chiddush of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, which the Gemara completely supported. And in terms of the end of Havdalah, there was the Shitta of Rabbi Yossi who says Mekadesh Yisrael. There was the Shitta of the Chachamim who said Soide Bereshis. There was the Shitta of Rabbi Meir who said Yoitze Bereshis. Abaya or Rabbi Yosef condemned the view of Mekadesh Yisrael and embraced the halacha of Shmuel, which is Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol, unlike Rav, who believed that you have to say Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadesh Yisrael, as discussed at length in yesterday's Shir Gemara on Kuf Daled Amud Aleph. Now the Gemara continues and says a story, fascinating story. Ula ikla lePumbedisa. Ula once arrived in Pumbedisa. Malay. Who was Ula? Ula was from the 2nd and 3rd generation of Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael, but he used to visit a lot Babylonia, Iraq, including Pumbedisa, and he brought many of the teachings of Eretz Yisrael to Bavel and back. Ula traveled. Ula was a student of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan and other great sages of Eretz Yisrael, who was the 1st generation of Amoraim of Eretz Yisrael, the editor of Talmud Yerushalmi, and Ula once comes to Pumbedisa. Who does he meet in Pumbedisa? He meets Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda is one of the most important, prominent Amoraim in all of Shas. Rabbi Yehuda was from also the 2nd generation of Amoraim. He lived in Bavel, that's why he's called Rav. The Amoraim of Bavel are always called Rav versus Rabbi. That's how you know they lived in Bavel. And Rav Yehuda founded a yeshiva in Pumbedisa. And this yeshiva was probably, in Jewish history, one of the longest yeshivas that lasted. In history, it lasted for more than 800 years. More than 800 years. You don't have a yeshiva that lasted so long. You could just imagine the deficit. They're still trying to pay up the debts of Pumbedisa yeshiva. A lot of Meshalachim, I think, that collect money are collecting for Pumbedisa. Yeah. So, Rabbi Yehuda was a Rosh Yeshiva of Pumbedisa. Rabbi Yehuda was his main Rebbe was Rav and then Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel, of course, both lived in Bavel. They were the 1st generation of Amoraim in Bavel, and Rabbi Yehuda was a student of Rav, and then later he became one of the closest disciples of Shmuel. Shmuel was mafli Rabbi Yehuda to the point that he said, "Les den barnash." I don't know how he could be a human being. That's what a great person he was. And Rav Shmuel used to call him shinana, which is sharp. And that's why you will see throughout the whole Shas, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda always says things in the name of Rav, including in Pesachim, because Rabbi Yehuda was one of the great Talmidim of Rav, and then also one of the great Talmidim of Shmuel, and he founded the yeshiva in Pumbedisa. So Ula comes to Pumbedisa, and who does he meet? Amalei. So Ula comes to Pumbedisa, and he's there for a Shabbos.
Why Ula doesn't have a title, right, bro? He's everywhere.
Usually there was no smicha. If there was no smicha, Ishma Peyish till Moshe Rabbeinu. Well, that was often the situation. Amalei Rav Yehuda, who's the Rosh Yeshiva of Pumbedisa. So Rabbi Yehuda is considered the great sage of the city of Pumbedisa. Amalei Rabbi Yitzchak Berei. He tells his son Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yehuda had a son Rabbi Yitzchak. And he tells Rabbi Yitzchak, Zil amtele kalkola de pera. Go bring Ula a basket filled with fruits. V'chazei heicha avdel. So this will give you an excuse to be able to see how he makes Havdalah. Just to walk in, for Havdalah, Ula says, it's private. So how do you get to see how Ula makes Havdalah? Rabbi Yehuda wanted to know how Ula makes Havdalah because of all of these shittas in Gemara. What do you say? Do you say one hamavdil? Do you say many hamavdils? Right? Rabbi Yehuda Anasi used to say one hamavdil. Benon shel gdoshim, Rabbi Menachem used to say one hamavdil. Others said many hamavdils, like we do. Right? And how do you finish the bracha? Yotzi Mekadosh Yisrael, Yotzi Bereshis, Soida Bereshis. So Rabbi Yehuda was wondering how Ula makes Havdalah.
Or he says, Atzei b'samim.
Okay, but that's not the discussion here. That's a discussion for a whole week, how you say brachas on summon.
Couldn't you just ask him directly?
Huh?
Why couldn't you just ask him directly?
Why he couldn't just ask Ula directly?
Why you get on about
He didn't want to know what Ula would say. He wanted to know what Ula does. That's a big difference. Ula could say, this one says this one says this one says this says this.
He wanted to see.
He wanted to see. The Gemara has an expression, Ma'aseh Rav. The greatest thing is a Ma'aseh. Ma'aseh Rav, right? The best thing is a Ma'aseh. He wants to see. So how do you do it? It's time to have his son go in. It's not going to work. Bring him a gift. Bring him good. So it's already an excuse. And you'll be able to give him, see how he does Havdalah.
Can't eat.
So that's what the Rashbam says. Rashbam says, Zil amtile lu'ula, u'ba'alila zu. Alila zu means this excuse. Alila is like a scheme. It's a scheme. Tire eich mavdil. How he's being mavdil. But I saw that the Maharam Chalva says, one of the Rishonim, Reb Moshe Chalva says, that the vart was different. Bring him fruits, and he's going to want to eat them. And he can't eat before Havdalah. So he's going to make Havdalah. That's the pshat. Bring him fruits, he's going to want to make Havdalah because he's going to want to eat them. V'chazei si heicha Havdalah, he makes Havdalah. Lo yazal. Rabbi Yitzchak did not go to the south. He didn't go. Instead, Shada Leila Abaya. He sent Abaya, who was also in Pumbedisa, obviously, to go see this. Now, Abaya, at that time, was very young, and he was a student in the yeshiva of Pumbedisa. He was a student of Rabbi Yehuda. Abaya is from the 3rd and 4th generation of Ameiraya. So you have Abaya is a student of Rabbi Yehuda, just like Rabbi Yitzchak is a son and a student of Rabbi Yehuda. Ultimately, Abaya one day would become the Rosh Yeshiva of Pumbedisa, but that's much later. At this point, Rabbi Yitzchak could send Abaya. So he sends Abaya to Ula. Kiyasa Abaya, when Abaya comes back, Amalei, Rabbi Yitzchak says to him, Heichi Amar, nu, how did Ula say Havdalah? Amalei Abaya said, these were his words, Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Choil, Amar V'Suloi. He said, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Choil. Which, as we know, was the Havdalah of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, was the Havdalah of Rabbi Menachem Ber Simai Benon Shel Gdoshim. This is a Havdalah where you use only one language of Havdalah, and it's a simple, and there's no end even. Baruch Atah Hashem, you just say once. Baruch Atah Hashem, you don't say it twice. We say Baruch Atah Hashem in the beginning. Baruch Atah Hashem, but this is just a beginning, and just one nusach of Havdalah. V'sula, yeah, one Havdalah, no other Havdalahs, and there was no chasima to Havdalah. As Rashi puts it, no, a koisya. A kois, the Chachamim said that you make Havdalah with one. But if you look at the first Rashi on top of the page, the first line, Mamish, Kuf Dalar Amid Hamavdal ben Kodesh L'Chol, V'su loy amar be'shar Havdalahs v'loy chasam ba. No other Havdalahs, meaning he didn't say Or L'Choshech, Yisrael Amim, Yoim HaShvi, L'Chesh Mamais, and of course the other ones, Tamei, Tahir, Kayanim, Leviim, Yisrael, Mayim, Al Yoinim, Mayim, Tachtoinim, all the good Havdalahs, nothing, and v'loy chasam ba. and there was no end Baruch Atah Hashem, because when you have such a short bracha, you're not going to say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol Baruch Atah Hashem hamavdil kodesh l'chol. You did that already. We don't say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam Boire Priya Eitz Baruch Atah Hashem Boire Priya Eitz. It doesn't work that way. You only do a psicha and a chesima when you have a body in the middle, which is significant text. You're not going to just repeat the same words, because why are you repeating your bracha? It's like saying a bracha twice. So Ula doesn't put in the other havdalahs, and as a result of that, he also doesn't have a chasima. So it's a completely different havdalah. In the beginning. Baruch Atah Hashem. Of course he said Baruch Atah Hashem. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. Done. No havdalah ceremony.
Did Ula have any connection with Rabbi Menachem Sinai?
No. Oh, that I don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
A student?
That I don't know.
Because that's exactly the shita of Rabbi Menachem.
Rabbi Yehuda Nasi used to say that havdalah.
It might not be a question, but what do we learn from that? His son didn't listen.
Good question, Rabbi Litzman. It's not a nudnik question. A good question. It's a good question. How and what happened with Kibudov? The Tatat Gehasen gain, and not just any father, Rabbi Yehuda.
No reaction from the father.
Well, there is a reaction. We'll soon see. No, don't worry. The father got upset. Don't worry.
He's asking that. He said Hashem, obviously.
Yeah, the Gemara doesn't have to say Hashem because it's not relevant. Obviously, without Hashem, it's not a bracha. You have to say Shem and Malchus, right? You always have to mention Hashem, and you have to mention Melech HaOlam. So that's an obvious. That's a given. The Gemara says Baruch, and then it's like 3 dots. Baruch Hamavdil Mekadosh L'chol. Because what we're trying to bring out here is not that he said Hashem's name or didn't. He obviously did. Every bracha you do. The point is, only a Baruch in the beginning and not at the end, and only one type of Havdalah. He didn't introduce any other type of Havdalah. Because we learned yesterday on Kuf Daled Amud Aleph that there's 7 types of Havdalahs, right? There's Kodesh L'chol, there's Ar L'choshech, there's Yisrael L'amim, there's Tamei L'tahar, there's Mayim Elyonim, Mayim Tachtoinim, number 5. There's Koyanim versus Leviim and Yisraelim, number 6. And number 7, there's Leviim versus Yisraelim. Right? There's Koyanim versus everybody, and there's Leviim versus Yisraelim. Because Leviim are also holier. Yam L'charava we deleted because there's no source in Torah for that Havdalah. So that the Gemara deleted, said it was a mistake. But those are the 7. Ula did one. Ula did one, yeah. So again, Abaye comes back to Rabbi Yitzchak who sent him, and he tells Rabbi Yitzchak that Ula just did Amavdil Mekadosh L'chol. So now, remember, Rabbi Yitzchak was sent by his father with the fruits, but Rabbi Yitzchak didn't go himself, he sent Abaye. But his father wanted to know. So Asa L'kamei Da'avua. So now Rabbi Yitzchak comes to his father, Rabbi Yehuda. Amalei, and he tells his father, Amalei, his father tells him, Nu, Heichi Amar. What happened? How did he say it? How did he say Havdalah? Amalei, Rabbi Yitzchak said, now if you were the son, what would you do? What would you say? Okay. So he could have just answered. He could have just said, Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, but he didn't. He said, Ano loy ozli. I never went. Ano shadrise la Abaya. I sent Abaya. Va'omali, and Abaya told me that Ula said, Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, and that's it. Amalei, Rabbi Yehuda tells the son, Rav Rivanuse demar. The sense of exaltedness of the master. Usiraruse demar, and the sense of rulership of the master. Raruse from the word sar, and Rav Ravnuse from the word rabbanus, Rav. The greatness and the sense of leadership, of exaltedness of the master. Exaltedness. Garma lamar, caused the master, the loitema shmaitzim mipumei, that this halacha will not be said from his mouth, meaning from your mouth. It will not be said in your name, it will be said in Abaya's name. Your sense of exaltedness, of aloofness, that you decided you're not going to go to Ula to find out how he says, but you're going to stay home and send Abaya, caused that this halacha in perpetuation throughout history will be said not in your name, but in Abaya's name.
Since he's dead. It's the same thing that his dad did. His dad could have also done himself. He sent the son. So.
I give him the opportunity, and he missed the opportunity.
Yeah.
It was a missed opportunity. That's what he meant, a missed opportunity. How do they translate Rav Rivanuse and Sroruse?
Haughtiness and domination.
Okay. Haughtiness and domination. Okay. I would say aloofness, a sense of aloofness and exaltedness. Rav Rivanuse, Sroruse. It's because that this shmu is not going to be said in your mouth. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda was upset that his son missed this opportunity to go see Ula. And what he was saying here, the Rashbam says something very interesting. Take a look in the Rashbam.
Could have said in the stream.
So what? It won't be said in your name. So he says, V'amrin, the Gemara says in Yevamos, Kol Talmud Chacham sha'omnim dvar shmua mipiv, sifsoisav doivavois bakever. A Talmud Chacham that you say over a shmua, halacha in his name, from his mouth, even after he passed away, sifsoisav doivavois bakever, his lips move and utter those words in the kever. So he said, if you had the schus and you would have gone to Ula, and you would have been the source of how to say Avdallah, so then when we would say over this halacha forever, whose sifsoisav would be doivavois bakever, it would be Rabbi Yitzchak. But since you didn't go, it was Abaye who said over the halacha, so therefore, that's what he means, like Temer Shmaitim Mipume, that forever this halacha is not being said from your mouth, and causing your mouth to say it every time a person says it.
Just throwing it in here, pointing this all out.
We were once, there was once a group of Bachim who were tested by hard on Maseches Kiddushin by Rav Pinchas Hirschsprung, who was the Rav of Montreal. Rav Pinchas Hirschsprung was a Talmud of Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, and he was one of those people with the needles, you know, the needle stories, but it wasn't a story. It was a real thing, if you remember Rav Pinchas Hirschsprung. He knew mamish every line of the whole Shas, exactly, Baal Peh. So he's testing a group of Maseches Kiddushin, and people, even when they learn Gemara and they know it, it's the names, they usually get confused, you know. Ula said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of this, V'item in the name of this one, V'yeshayim was the name of this one. It's very hard. So a boy was saying over the Gemara, and he said, Abaye says, and Rav Pinchas said, Abaye, Rava. Oh, what's the chilek, Abaye, Rava? Rav Pinchas said, what do you mean, what's the chilek? When you said Abaye opened his mouth in the kever, because you're about to say over halacha, and then you say a halacha, and it's not his. Is it geblieben mit dem Moil offen? Stayed with his mouth open. He said, that's not nice. That's not nice. You don't do that. You say over a name in Shas, it has to be the name. Because I never forgot that. The Hest. He said, you caused Abaye to bleiben mit dem Moil offen. The mouth open, he's waiting for his halacha, and you're not saying it. You're not saying it. That's what he told the boy. So that's the Indian of what I found interesting is, how many times does he call his son master in this conversation? How many times? Take a look.
Twice.
Take a look, better.
That's what it is.
How many times? He's rebuking his son. How many times does he call him master? 3 times in one sentence. He's telling him that he was haughty. It's a form of arrogance. Lazy, arrogant, whatever. So it's a nishka past to gain life, right? And he calls him Mar 3 times. The dominance of the master, the sense of exaltedness of the master, calls the master. That's how you call your son, master? Anybody here calls their son master? You tell your son, it's time to go to bed. He doesn't. Mister, yeah. But not master, yeah?
One of my kids here is master.
It's very interesting how he spoke to him. He's giving him Musa. He was upset. The Rashbam says, he was upset that he didn't go himself, that he sent somebody else, because he felt that it was a schus for him, that when a person like Ula, who was considered one of the Gedolei Adar, comes to town, and I'm giving you a shlichus to go to him, don't send somebody else. Go yourself. And he was upset. And he was saying that this is not a good sign. It's a sign of a certain aloofness. That, you're not going yourself. Don't send somebody else. Go yourself. And nonetheless, he called him Mar 3 times. So I saw one of the commentators say that it was cynical. It was like, the master. It's like you call your son the Gadol Adar, you know? The Gadol Adar, so yeah, the master. But I'm not sure that's pshat. I'm not sure. 3 times. Because Bichlal, the Chazal were not cynical. They weren't cynical people. They were sharp. They said what they meant, but they were not cynical. This would be like, the master. No, not the master. You're a little kid. That's what he meant. You're a little kid. So that's why I'm not sure that's what he meant. Maybe, but I don't think so. I think he meant he was talking to him in a certain way. In other words, whenever you give mussar to somebody, it could come from 2 different perspectives. It could come, why you're being such a baby, or why you're being so low, why you're doing such a stupid thing, or from a completely different perspective. You're such a great person. You're really such a great person. You have such great potential. It's a pasnash vader. This is below you. It's a completely different approach. And perhaps that's why he used the word mar, because he uses it 3 times in one sentence. It's very telling. Now the question is, he gives him techacha, yeah.
So instead of to praise him in the same
I'm saying, yeah. It's not stam techacha, it's with the word mar. The shaila now is, Rabbi Litzman said, how could he not go? Forget everything else. There's a mitzvah of kibbud av. Your father told you to go. He told him. He gave him fruits. His father doesn't mention that. His father mentions the fact that he lost an opportunity to get the halacha straight from Ula and become the conduit. That's he lost. It went to Abaya, not to him. Granted. But what about the etzamim that he didn't listen to his father?
Father wanted to find out something. Found out. To him, his father wanted to find out an answer to that question. He got an answer to the question. It wasn't about him.
It's not that he didn't do it.
Right. He did some shlichus.
He did it through a shlichus.
Right.
But l'chayra, yeah.
Right. His father wanted to give him something, or his father could have gone himself.
His
His father saw his schus, he wanted to give his kid schus to go, but really he was about getting the answer. So his son said,
No, I think it was also his father wanted to see, he should see Rabula.
That's why it's
That was the main, that was the big reason also.
no, they saw Rabula. He
That's
wanted
why
to see Rabula now during
He told him
Kabbalah.
you did wrong, you should have.
Ula, he was in yeshiva, he saw him.
At the end of the day, he
Ula wasn't, Ula was part of the yeshiva.
whatever
came
it was,
to visit.
whatever reason,
Ula came to visit. He wanted he should see Ula, yeah.
whatever
He wanted to
reason it
see
was.
during Havdalah, that was the point.
You should have
My
gone.
wife went with Shabbos.
Maybe one of
But
the
we asked
guys
her
had the
about the
opportunity.
Beisharim. I went especially to see him. To see him, I wanted to see him.
That's
okay.
What?
Why is it relevant?
You don't have to know that.
That's also true.
Yeah.
You know what the Ula said.
Everything matters.
Right, it
Yeah.
does.
So why did we?
I see that the Mesifta they bring from Shal Chuvas Mahari Bruna, Simon Kufla Matez, that from this story you see that a person could call his child Mar, and it doesn't take away from the respect of the father. And even though he was rebuking him, he wanted to speak to him in a respectful way. Clearly from Shal Chuvas Mahari Bruna, very interesting vart. So this question of Kibbud Av is discussed here. They bring it from Chidushay, Rav Bengis was a very famous Pesach from Yerushalayim, I think. So in his Chidushim, he asked this question, how is he not Mekayim mitzvahs Kibbud Av? And even if you want to say that he did it through a Shliach, but usually Kibbud Av is a mitzvah shebegufay. It's a mitzvah that a person does himself. So you don't do Shlichus. And even if you want to say that here Shlichus would help, because here Rabbi Yehuda just wanted information. So who cares how you got it? You know, the Kibbud Av is not that you should go yourself. The Kibbud Av is he wants to know how Havdalah is done. So that was the tachlis of the Kibbud Av. If that's the tachlis of the Kibbud Av, you did the Kibbud Av. You found out because a Shliach also found out. But nonetheless, he says, it's a shayla on Rabbi Yitzchak, fart, mitzvah bo yosim and b'shlucha. It's not like he couldn't do it himself. If he couldn't have done it himself, his father wouldn't have been upset. He could have done it himself. So if he could have done it himself, even if he could have gotten away with it, what was the havana not to get away with it? So he says something very interesting. And that is, there's a question by Kibbud Av. What's the definition of Kibbud Av? What does it mean, respect your father? And in Jewish history, it came out in a very interesting situation. In the times of the big machlokes between the Misnagdim and the Chassidim in the 1700s. And that is, there were many people, many of the Chassidim embraced Nusach Sfard, as they still do. Even though they were Ashkenazim, Eastern Europe, but they davened Nusach Sfard, right? And the Balatanya himself wrote a special siddur, which is based on Nusach Sfard and Nusach Harizal. It's called Alpi Nusach Harizal. So many of the Hasidim in that time, they changed the Nusach from their father. So there's a letter in the Igris, in the book of letters of the Balatanya, there's a letter, the Balatanya to a Rav, who complains about a certain fellow, a certain individual, who grew up in an Ashkenazic home, and he changed the Nusach HaTfilah against his father's wishes. And it's a violation of Kibud Av. And that's where he brings him a Rashba, a famous Rashba in Masechta Yevamis Davav, who basically says something very interesting. Kibud Av doesn't mean whatever my father tells me, I have to do. What if I disagree with my father? So let's say your father says, I don't want you to daven in this shul. Or I want you to daven in this shul. Or I don't want you to change this nusach. Or I want you to change this nusach. Or I don't want you to do this minhag. Or I want you to do this minhag, right? Whatever it is. So it says clearly in your Yeridea that when it comes to learning and it comes to a shidduch, there's no inyan of kibud av, right? Your father says, I don't want you going to learn. There's no inyan, and there's or it tells you to violate a mitzvah. We all know that. But if it's not violating a mitzvah, he says, marry this one or don't marry this one. It may be advisable to listen to your father. It may be very advisable. The point is, it's not a chiv of kibud av. Yeah, we know that. And also limited. But what about something? He's not telling you to be over on a mitzvah, right? Not to get married or not to learn, not to go to this yeshiva. But he's telling you something that's for him important. So the Rashba says that there's no such a thing as kibud av in this area. There's absolutely no such a thing as kibud av. What's kibud av? The Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Lamed Aleph says what's kibud av. Your father needs to eat, you feed him. Your father needs to drink, you give him a drink. Your father needs clothes. Your father needs to go to the doctor, you take him to the doctor. Your father needs medicine. In other words, kibud av is something that your father directly has hana from it. It's something that he needs. Now, my father may say, well, when you daven this nusach, you're giving me heart palpitations. Okay, so you need to work on yourself. But it's not something, a father is not supposed to live vicariously through his children. Very important. Your children are your children, you are you. Yeah. So if somebody says, my father wants me to do this, it's very nice to do what your father says, but is it a mitzvah kibud av? That when your father wants you to do something or not do something, that you're not mechuyev al pi halacha, are you mechuyev? So Rav Bengis says that the Gemara tells this story to bring out also a halacha. For whatever reason, Rabbi Yitzchak felt, maybe he wanted to do something else at that time. Maybe he had to do something at this time. It's not discussing if he's right or wrong. But the Gemara is trying to say there was no aveir of kibud av here. There was no aveir of kibud av. If their father needs something personal and I can do it, then I have to, because that's his own hana. But if I'm telling you what you do, how you should live your life, that's not called kibud av. So the Balatanya brings this Rashba and says, following the nusach of davening of your father has nothing to do with kibud av. If a child feels, this is how I want to daven, this is how I want to connect to Hashem, there's no way of saying that because of kibud av you're not supposed to do this. Absolutely not. And then he said that Balatanya says, but nonetheless I'm going to speak to him that he should, whatever.
It's not the same situation.
It is. Maybe he wanted to learn.
He asked his son to do something.
But not for himself. Not for himself.
He asked his son.
No, he did do it. He did.
Things. One for one information, and he did both.
But he didn't do it directly.
The one that was for
yeah.
So
the question is, what about kibud av? To do the mitzvah. The answer is it's not a mitzvah of kibud av here.
if a father wants food,
But if his son davens a different nusach, it's not something he asked.
He asked him to do for his sake, because the halacha could have been said in his name.
He wanted information, and I want you to go get it for a separate reason, because that way forever.
There's no hana for him directly. It's a hana for him that his son is doing something right, but that's your son's decision. But there's no hana for him directly.
That
You're not mechuyev to listen.
ruach to Hashem, you fulfill His will. Why?
That's called nachas ruach, but not a mitzvah. Let's say I want to daven. Let me ask you a question. There were children who left their father's path, yeah, and they became, let's say, chassidim of a particular rebbe, yeah, right. A satmar chassid becomes a Chabad chassid, just for sake of argument. In Monsey, there was a whole ma'aser, right? And the father is very upset. Did this man violate the mitzvah of kibud av? Why not? The father says, I want you to daven, I want you to do this, I want you to have these minhagim, I want you to send your kids to these yeshivas. Your father says, forget about this. Your father says, I want your kids in this yeshiva, not in this yeshiva. Is it kibbud av? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Why not? My father asked me. The answer is, it's a beautiful thing to do a Jew a favor, and especially your father, and you're trying to give him nachas. But if you feel that for your child or your family, this is not the proper way to live, or at least there's a much better way, then that's your obligation. And if a father can't understand this, it's the father's issue, not the son's issue. That's where the father got to grow up.
This Gemara doesn't seem to invoke these things. The better way not to do it.
It's exactly what he invokes. He says that's the reason I want.
The father felt the best thing Motzei Shabbos for his boy is not Avos Abonim. Okay, not whatever. I don't know what Yitzchak did, but Yitzchak was a Gadol B'Yisrael, so he wasn't wasting his time. He wasn't surfing the web for the Motzei Shabbos news on the websites. Yeah, he felt this is the best thing I want you to do. That's what your father said. Okay, but I don't want to do it. Maybe he made a mistake, but that's not an inyan of kibbud av. That's what he says, Taichus in the Gemara. I'm just telling you a vart. I'm not taking sides. Of course it's a beautiful thing to listen to your father, but the question is it a mitzvah of kibbud av? People confuse the situation. My father telling me how to live when it comes to my life is not an inyan of kibbud av for me to listen or not listen. People make a mistake. I should be respectful. To embarrass my father and say, you don't know what you're talking about, that's an aveira. Just like sitting on his seat or interrupting him in the middle of his words, right? The Gemara is saying, Ezo kavod, Ezo murder. But to do my own thing in a respectful way, not to contradict him or say, you're stupid and you're ridiculous and you're crazy. That's not nice. That I'm not allowed to do. But to decide how I'm living my life, my father said, I want you to go to this chasana. Yeah? Maybe my kids need me. So is it kibbud av? It's not. No, it's no. I want you to go to this chasana. You have to come to this chasana. I can't come to this chasana. It's not a violation of kibbud av. You understand? It's a very important idea.
That's actually why
Now, it could be that Yitzchak regretted it. It could be that Yitzchak regretted it. Sometimes your father tell... What'd you say?
That's why the Rav, the father of Rabbi Yitzchak, calls him Mar, because he maybe even learned this from his son.
Could be. Very nice. Interesting. He's saying he called him Mar because maybe he learned this halacha from his son. That kibbud av doesn't mean you have to listen about something. There's a story with Reb Chaim Brisker. Rav Zevin brings it in Ishim V'Shittas. It's just an interesting story. The Gemara discusses in Kiddushin if kibbud av is mishal ben or mishal av, meaning if there's an expense in kibbud av. My father needs food, right? Or my father needs medicine. Do I have to pay for it? Or no, my father has to pay for it. I have to help him get it or bring him there. So the Gemara answers mishal av. In other words, kibbud av is not something I have to spend money on. Again, we're not talking if it's nice and appropriate and beautiful. And there's a concept of hakaras hatoiv, you know. A father usually has paid a lot of bills for a child. Those are all very important ideas, but we're talking here about the mitzvah in Aseres Hadibris Kabed Savicha, you know, which is a mitzvah. So, to the maskan of the Gemara is mishal av. You don't have to spend your own money on kibbud av.
To help you be Mekayim.
Yeah. So there was a Yid who came to Reb Chaim Brisker, and he says that his father is older and he's sick and he's frail. And mitzat kibbud av, you should go visit him, because that's already a hana of the father. Visiting him is not your father mixing into your life. Bikur chaylim is part of kibbud av. It's father's in a hospital, visiting him is kibbud av. You encourage him, you're there for him, you help him, and so forth, right? But he told Reb Chaim, it's a train ride. It's one city in Russia to another city in Russia. Reb Chaim lived in Brisk, Lithuania. And this is one city in Lithuania or Russia to another city, and it's a train ride. And since he doesn't have money, and kibbud av is mishal av, so really his father has to pay the ticket, and since he doesn't have money, right, so mainly he's potter. He came to Reb Chaim to find out if he's right not to go visit his father because it's a train ride. Reb Chaim said, you're right, you taka have to walk. You're right, you taka have to walk. It's a klugei rav, yeah? You have to walk. You're right. You taka, don't pay. But he was bringing out the idea. That's all not a question of kibudav. But this is a very, very interesting shaila. I actually have to deal with this pretty often because I get quite a few emails. I'm not going to say pretty often, but not infrequently of these types of questions. My mother and father insist on this. Is it right? What's right? I'll be Torah, what's not, and so forth. It becomes an interesting question. You know, parents, especially in certain cultures, mix into everything. And they have a certain way, and they use kibbud of aim as a guilt trip, you know. The Torah zok, the Torah says, and, you know, kids are sensitive. And it's a very delicate thing, and it's not just, it's important for parents to know when they're really crossing boundaries. Because, I don't know, maybe it's a little too blunt to say it, sometimes when the father is demanding things from the child that he shouldn't be demanding, or it's really not his business, he's becoming the child. and he takes it personal, and he becomes the child, and the child becomes the father. It's like, you really have to let your children, as adults, make decisions. They're married people, they're raising a family. You know, your mitzvah of chinuch ended already. Your mitzvah of chinuch ended. You can guide them, you can advise them, you can love them, you can embrace them, but try to control them, it's really not going to work. Huh?
It's also not fair. It's not right.
Yeah.
You're using the Torah as your...
Right, but that's what sometimes people do.
The father gets upset when his son is Rabbi Jacobson.
Because sometimes the parents don't have experience and they really know.
You're right. If you have a good relationship with your children, they will respect your experience and you'll communicate it that way. But very often it's not so rational, and etc. Not to compare it with this story. This was a completely different story. But even in this story, where Rabbi Yehuda was the gadol, one of the Gedolei Hadar, he still didn't listen to him. It's a very interesting ha'ara. That's a very interesting ha'ara, and it's based on a Rashba in Yevamas Davav and other Rishonim, I think the Ramban also, who says this about kibudav. The kibudav is only things that are hana for him. Hana for him. And that means if I change a shul, or I change a nusach, or I have a certain derech, or have something I want to do, or I don't want to do. Yeah. I don't want to do gebrokts anymore. I don't want to eat gebrokts. My father eats gebrokts. Should you take it as an insult? Some fathers get very, very insulted. You know, very, very insulted. But the truth is, it should be the worst thing. Your son took on a chumrah that you don't have, right? Sometimes it's the other way around. He takes on a chumrah, he gets rid of a chumrah of his father. Okay, so then... But again, it's a cheshbon of the child. Sometimes your child makes decisions. It's between him and God. You can't always... Sag die Gemara weiter. Meisva. Of course, we're not going to let all Ula off the hook so easily, right? Meisva, they asked a question on Ula. Another question you have to ask, but I don't know that we have information to. Rabbi Yitzchak wasn't mechuyev to listen to his father, but why taka did he not listen to his father? In other words, what was it that made him not listen? That we don't know, of course.
Yeah, but he gave him the opportunity to go
see Ula.
Sends his son to Gadol Hadar. It's an opportunity.
Why he wouldn't take the opportunity?
No, the same way that he wanted to give his son the opportunity, he wanted to give his buddy Abaye the opportunity.
He could have gone with him.
He would run.
I hear. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to your question. Sometimes a pnimi, you know, sometimes a pnimi, you have to do what you have to do. Like you can't. There's an expression. There's a interesting ma'isa. The minhag by the world is that after hashkivenu you say yiru eineinu, right? The text. Lubavitchers don't know what I'm talking about, but after hashkivenu, there's a whole nusach that you say, right? And then you do Kaddish Manas. Friday night, V'shamru. Rosh Hashanah, Tikku b'Chodesh Shofar, Yom Tov, you do the Pesukim of Yom Tov. And it's a whole big thing, V'shamru, right? It's a whole, everyone gets excited, V'shamru Neisos. On Shabbos, they do it slow. The Balatanya and the Vilna Gaon felt that it was a hefsek. Because halachically, it's a big problem to be mafsek between Gal Yisrael and Shmini Esrei. Hashkivenu, the Gemara says, how could you be mafsek? The Gemara says, since the Rabbanu were masakin, it's kebracha arichta damya. But they felt that to add any other psukim is wrong. And that's why in the Nusach of the Balatanya, Nusach Chabad, and the Vilna Gaon, and some others, Chaim Berlin also, he said. They don't say it. Okay, there's no after Hashkivenu you don't say anything, you go straight to Shmini Esrei. After Hashkivenu Shabbos, you go straight to Kaddish Shmini Esrei, nothing else. But in the Siddur of the Balatanya, he put in V'shamru Friday night. Usually what he didn't say, he didn't put in. V'shamru he put in Friday night. And he says, those who say it have what to be Saimach on. Even though it's better not to, but they have what to be Saimach on. Yirei Neinu, Baruch Hashem Lo'ilam Amen V'Amen. He doesn't put in. V'shamru he puts in.
Skip both.
The Brisk also skip it. Because
Much Shabbos, they skip.
yeah.
In the whole week,
Even during the week.
Even during the week. Because halachically, you need a heter to add something. So Balatanya was very pristine in that sense. He wanted to go back to the basics, so he took out a lot of these types of stuff. Most of the piyutim he took out. It's a shorter davening. So he wanted more his baininus by Krishma, by Birchas Krishma, Psukkah de Zimra. Almost all of them. Yeah, he took out all the Yitzras. The Vilna Gaon also, very interesting, even though there was a big machlekes, but in this issue, they almost agreed on a lot of issues, because they were both like purists, like go back to the core, yeah. Like a lot of the fluff and accessories, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, tons of piyutim he took out. He felt that any piyut that wasn't written, consistent with Teres HaKabbalah, shouldn't be said, whatever. He was very, very purist. And diktuk, everything had to be diktuk. It was very interesting how his shitta was in this. That's unclear. But at some point, the Middle Ages or whatever. So, why am I saying this? The Barditchev, I believe Yitzchak of Barditchev was together with the Balatanya. They were mechotan. They were very close, and he said, "How do you not say V'shamru Friday night? How do you not say V'shamru? Do you know that when Jews say V'shamru Friday night, he said in Yiddish, Vert a yirid in Himmel. A yirid is like a fear, yeah, like a flea market, a marketplace where in Russia, Eastern Europe, they would come like on the yirid days and everybody would do business and merchandise. Basically, networking. The whole world came to the yirid. It was a unique commotion. So he said, when Jews say V'shamru Friday night, the Barditchev said, is a yirid in Himmel. Yeah, it's like it's a fear in heaven. How could you not say V'shamru? So he responded, he said, Mechuten, nicht auf jede yirid darf ich sein. I don't have to be at every yirid. Okay. It's very, very deep. Why? Some people, I have to be everywhere. You have to know who you are. Sometimes you have an avoid that you don't belong there. Because if I'm nowhere, I have to be everywhere. If I'm somewhere, I could be here. It's called pnimius. Pnimius means I don't look at people who are lower than me. I also don't look at people who are higher than me. I learn from them, but I don't emulate. You don't emulate even people that are higher than you. Because you're really in touch with your Seder, your Neshama. I'm just saying, Rabbi Yitzchak didn't go. Lo yazal. It's also an Indian. I don't know why, but that's what I'm saying. Nishtaf yada yirid, you could be. Okay. Meisve, they asked a question on Ula. The Brisa says, Kol ha-brachas kulon, all the brachas, Pesach bebaruch, v'choisem bebaruch. All brachas. Kol ha-brachas kulon, all brachas, there's going to be an exception, but all brachas, which means generally all brachas, you begin with baruch. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, and you finish with Baruch. Baruch atah Hashem, etc. Let's give 3 examples. Shmini Esrei. How do you begin Shmini Esrei? Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu Elokei Avosseinu, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. You do the first bracha. Melech Ozer Mashiach Magen. Baruch atah Hashem, Magen Avraham. You begin Baruch atah Hashem, you end Baruch atah Hashem. Let's do benching. How does benching? Baruch atah Hashem l'keinu melech haolam hazones ha'olam kuloi. You end Peseches Yedecha Masbir l'chol chayratzim. Baruch atah Hashem hazones ha'kol. Let's do Kiddush. Kiddush Friday night. Baruch atah Hashem l'keinu melech haolam asher kedushanu b'mitzvayis v'ratza banu v'shabbos kodshe b'avratzin. Kivanu v'chayter b'avo v'ratzin. Baruch atah Hashem b'kadosh. But same is true Yom Tov. So it's kol ha-brachas kulon. Generally, all the brachas you begin with Baruch atah Hashem. Pesach b'baruch, choisem b'baruch. Chutz, there's an exception. Birchas ha-mitzvahs. The bracha before, you do a mitzvah. Lahaniach tefillin. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. I don't say Baruch atah Hashem again. There's only an opening of bracha. All the mitzvahs, Netilas lulav, L'sativ batzitzis, mitzvahs derabbanan, Lahadak ner shel Chanukah, Mikra Megillah. We'll get to food in a moment. We're talking about brachas before mitzvahs. Here this rule doesn't apply. There's no baruch in the beginning and at the end. Next, birchas haperis. That's bracha on food, like fruits. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, boirei priya eitz. I don't do another baruch atah Hashem. Boirei priya adam, sha'akol niyeh b'dvarei, boirei priya gafen. When he says peris, he doesn't only mean fruits. He's just giving an example of birchas hanenin. These are all the brachas that we do before we enjoy something, not before mitzvah, before we enjoy something. There's no baruch at the end. Next, ubracha hasmucha lachaverta. A bracha that is following another bracha. It's samuch, it's near a friend, meaning it's following another bracha. So because it's a continuation of a previous bracha, because it's samuch, so this also is an exception. Let's give an example. Shmini esrei, but not the first blessing, from the second till the end. How does the second blessing begin? Ata gibor la'olam Hashem. We don't say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu v'elokei Aviseinu Ata gibor or whatever. We go Ata gibor. How do we end? Baruch atah Hashem echaya meis. Next bracha. Ata kadosh v'shem. We don't say Baruch atah Hashem. We finish Baruch atah. And the same is true all the brachas. Only the first blessing of Shmini Esrei starts Baruch atah Hashem. But everyone else doesn't start with Baruch atah Hashem. This is called bracha hasmucha lachaverta. And that's why you go till the end. Shma Kaleinu Ritzei, right? Sim Shalom.
The end ends.
Till the end.
Ends with the first benching.
Now go to benching. How does the second blessing of benching begin? Noida Lecha. It finishes Baruch atah Hashem al haaretz v'al hamazon. How does the third blessing begin? Rachem. It finishes al haaretz v'al hamazon. It finishes Uvnei Yerushalayim Baruch atah Hashem. We'll soon see the next blessing. But that's called bracha smucha lechavert. Next, bracha achroina shebekriya shma. The bracha that follows kriya shma. Emes v'yatziv or emes v'emuna. Okay? Let's look at the brachas before kriya shma. What do we do? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam yoitzer oir v'orei choshech. It's a long bracha. It finishes Baruch atah Hashem yoitzer ha'ma'oris. The next bracha, Ahavas oilam, Ahava Rabba. There's no baruch anymore. But it finishes Haboiche ba'ama Yisrael ba'ava. Then is Shema. Then starts a new bracha, Emes v'yatziv v'nochin. How does it end? Baruch atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. It doesn't start with baruch. At night, I start Baruch atah Hashem asher b'dvarei ma'ariv ha'aravim. I finish Baruch atah Hashem ma'ariv ha'aravim. But then Avas Olam, no baruch. After Kriya Shema, Emes ve'emuna, which finishes Baruch atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. There's no baruch in the beginning. That's what the Gemara means. Bracha achroina shebekriya Shema. The bracha that comes after Kriya Shema, meaning Emes v'yatziv or Emes v'emuna, she. All of these, what are all these? Bracha for mitzvahs, bracha for food, bracha that follows a previous bracha, right? All these brachas, yeshman, paiseach bebaruch ve'en chaysim bebaruch. In some you begin with baruch, but you don't end with baruch, like Boirei priya eitz, or al mitzvahs tefillin, or al netilas lulav, or al bir chametz. I start with baruch, but I don't finish with baruch. V'yeshman shechaysim bebaruch ve'en paiseach bebaruch. And there are those where you finish with baruch and you do not start with baruch. Birchas ha-mitzvahs, birchas ha-peres, you start with baruch, but because it's such a short text, all you're saying is Boirei priya eitz. You're not going to do another Baruch atah Hashem because you just did it. Or Lahaniach tefillin, it's such a short text, you're not going to do another one, right? Longer brachas, where you have words of praise or words of requests, right? Like Kiddush. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosov v'ratzabonu b'aratz chilonu. We speak about the beauty of Shabbos, right? Or Birchas Hamazon, we thank Hashem, Hazanas ha'olam, b'chein, b'chesed, b'racha. Over there you'll finish. But these are too short, so you'll start, you won't finish. V'yeshman, and then you have the opposite. Shechaysim bebaruch, ve'ein paiseach bebaruch. You'll finish with baruch and not start with baruch. That will be a bracha smucha lechaverta. Like Shmini Esrei, the second bracha, because you started with baruch, and the second bracha is a continuation to the first, you don't have to do baruch again, but rather you will just finish with baruch because the original baruch applies also to the second bracha. Right? Very good question. You want to know why by Birchas HaTorah, the second blessing, Asher Bachar Banu, do you start with Baruch Atah Hashem? L'cha'ira, it's Bucha L'chaverta. Excellent question. Good question.
Does it work the other way?
Birchas HaShachar is like Birchas HaNenin. It's like Birchas HaPeris. Before I eat, I make a bracha. I wake up in the morning, I could see, I say Pekei Chivrim. I can walk, I can say Amechem Etzadei Gaver. You understand?
Except for Amachsin Hashem Svigar Mason.
Over there, L'kai Neshama. L'kai Neshama.
That's why it's in the mid. It's in the.
Birchas HaTorah you do start. Baruch Hashem Chen Melech.
No, then.
Lasik B'divrei Soira. V'harav na, and then the next bracha is Baruch Atah Hashem Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Amun Aslan Sos. So he wants to know why you say Baruch there. But Birchas HaNenin includes Birchas HaShachar. So they're all short brachas. You will start with Baruch and not end with Baruch. Okay? Asher Yatzar is a longer bracha. You'll start with Baruch and end. So usually the rule is you start with Baruch and you end with Baruch. You need a good reason to take out one of the baruchs. If it's very short, or if it's coming on the heels of a previous bracha, which is bracha hasmucha la chaverta.
I always had a question with Al HaMichya at the end. It seems like there's a lot of baruchs.
Al HaMichya has a baruch in the beginning and a baruch at the end.
But I'm saying there seems to be more repetition than any bracha I can...
Al HaMichya?
And then it starts on Mechilakal and ends on Mechilakal.
But that's like the first blessing of benching. It starts with baruch and ends with baruch.
Here it's not only the baruch that's starting with it.
The interesting thing is Baruch Nefashos starts with baruch and doesn't end with baruch, even though it's not such a short text. No, not Baruch Atah Hashem. You say Baruch Atah Hashem Chei Ha'olam, right? That's an interesting. There are a few. These are the rules. The Gemara just set out the rules, and you have to figure out the rhythm.
You say it in food.
No, but Birchas HaMazon, we do Baruch in the beginning and Baruch at the end. Al HaMichya, we do. Why Baruch Nefashos? Yeah, it's much shorter, but it's not so short, right? Not so short. Okay, so B'meila, we have those brachas that you end with Baruch and don't begin with Baruch. Why? Because when you started the first bracha with Baruch, you don't have to repeat it in the second bracha and so forth. What about Kriyas Shema? It also works. Yoitzer Oir starts with Baruch. Avas Olam doesn't. Why? It's bracha hasmucha lachaverta. The same is true by Ma'ariv. Avas Olam doesn't start with Baruch. The chiddush here is that even Emes v'Yatziv and Emes v'Amuna, which had in between Kriyas Shema, but Kriyas Shema is not considered a hefsek from the bracha of Yoitzer Oir, and therefore you could just say Emes v'Yatziv without a Baruch. Because Emes is part of Kriyas Shema, even though it's not. Kriyas Shema ends Ani Hashem Elokeichem, but the Chazal say that since it says in the pasuk, the Yirmiyah says Hashem Elokim Emes, so after we say Ani Hashem Elokeichem, we say Emes, so it's considered an epilogue to Kriyas Shema. So it comes following Yoitzer Oir, so you don't have to do a new bracha. The same is true by Ma'ariv. Emes ve'Emunah doesn't need a new bracha. Of course, Hashkivenu doesn't need a new bracha. So that's the chiddush, that it's also a bracha smucha lachaverta. And the Brisa says v'hatoy v'hameitiv. What about by benching? Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, right? Hatoiv after Uvnei Yerushalayim. We say Baruch Atah Hashem Yerushalayim Amen. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. Adirenu Berenu Galenu Yeshenu Gdashenu etc. Hatoiv v'hameitiv lanu. Why just start with Baruch? So he says v'chein hatoiv v'hameitiv peiseich beBaruch v'einu chaysem beBaruch. That's unique. It's a long bracha, right? It comes following the other three brachas. You start with Baruch and you don't end with Baruch. We finish V'hoya Hashem Iftachai, right? Nara Yisi, if you say Nara Yisi, Hashem is Lamayitin, and that's it. There's no end of Baruch. It's Smucha Lachaverta. The reason is, very interestingly, because the original benching didn't have Hatoy V'hameitiv. Hatoy V'hameitiv, take a look at the Rashbam. Birchas Hatoy V'hameitiv, Birchas HaMazon, Afal Gav de Smucha Lechaverta, Shei Hischel Birchas HaMazon, Av became Pesach Baruch, Mishum de Bracha Ba'ampi Nafsha Isken, Mishum Haruge Beitar, Shenitnu Lekvura, Hatoiv Shelo Yisrichu V'hameitiv Shenitnu Lekvura. What happened was, after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash, Bar Kochva staged a revolt around 60 years after the destruction. The famous revolt, Rabbi Akiva supported him. Rabbi Akiva thought he was Mashiach. That revolt was ultimately very, very bloody. In the beginning it was successful, but at the end the Romans crushed it mercilessly and brutally in the city of Beitar. And the whole city of Beitar was decimated, and they wouldn't even allow them to be buried. It took a long, long time till the next Roman emperor gave permission to bury them. And then the Chazal, the Sanhedrin, made a new bracha in benching. Every day when you eat bread, to remember two things. Hatoiv, the bodies did not decay, they didn't rot, despite the scorching sun. And the second thing was that they could bury them. They can give them the dignity of burial. And it's interesting that it made its way into benching. They felt it's people don't realize today when we bench, every day we're thanking Hashem for the bodies of the corpses of Beitar that didn't rot and were buried. It's a politic thing. They didn't stop making up bracha. In benching they put it in. They put it in benching. The first three brachas, it says Moshe, Yeshua, David, and Shlomo, but the fourth one was added much, much later, so it's not considered Smucha Lachavertas. That's why they made a Baruch Atah Hashem in the beginning, because it's its own bracha. The reason that they felt this way was, it seems, because basically at that time the Jews were in exile. They were crushed, they were destroyed. And from a superficial, and not only superficial, from one perspective, it seemed like God has abandoned them. It was over, the glory was over. And even in this situation themselves, they were killed. The Romans took over and that was it. And when they saw that this was like a wink from God in the darkness, I'm with you. Don't think that just because there was a churban and you're now going to go through tremendous turmoil, it's over. The relationship is here. It's expressed differently, it's manifested differently. So for Chazal, this was so significant that despite the tragedy, there was a tremendous miracle because it was like a wink that encouraged them. It says by Yosef HaTzadik, when he was sold to Egypt, so it says that the merchants that retrieved him, they were carrying all types of herbs and incense. So Rashi says from the Medrash, Hashem didn't want that the tzaddik should smell bad smells on the way to Egypt. Right? So somebody once asked me, he said, really, if God cared about him so much, why didn't you bring him back home? If I can give you two offers. One is you go back home and it smells really bad, or you get sold as a slave for the rest of your life with beautiful perfume in your jail. Yeah, which one exactly are you going to prefer? What, you care about me? But the truth is that there's something very deep here. That this was like a wink. Yosef could feel that he's abandoned. It's over. This was a wink. I'm here with you. I'm here with you. It's a mission. Not going to be an easy mission. You're on a mission, but I'm here with you. So that was the uniqueness of the Harugei Beita Shenitnu L'Kfur, that they put in a special bracha into benching. So b'meila,
I heard something very interesting, that the bodies were out in the field like a grape, like an orchard, and that's like a grape orchard, and that's why a hatova metiv is also for wine, a better wine.
Interesting. Okay. Who says this? Okay. Wow. Hatova metiv on wine also, which is for simcha. There was a simcha. Hatova metiv, in other words, there was a simcha in this. There was a simcha. Right. Yeah. Why doesn't it end with Baruch? The reason it doesn't end with Baruch is because, as the Rashbam says, really it's supposed to be a very short bracha. You're supposed to say, when they made the bracha, it was Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hatoiv hametiv. So it was a very simple bracha. We added a lot of stuff of the same theme. How good Hashem is, Gmalonu, Gaimleinu, Yigmalenu, 3 toivs, 3 gemulos, 3 malchias, right? So therefore, it's still considered a short bracha, like Birchas HaMitzvahs, Birchas HaPeres, and you don't finish with a baruch. Okay, so let's just finish the point here. Kashi l'ula. So here's a question on ula. Why is it a question on ula? We said a regular bracha needs an opening baruch and an end baruch, and ula takes it out. It's havdalah and there's no end. So, it's not Birchas HaMitzvahs. It's like Kiddush. Kiddush, we make baruch at the beginning and the end.
Itself is the mitzvah.
Why are we making
It's not a bracha on another mitzvah. What's a bracha? B'sem mitzvah means you're about to do a mitzvah. What's the mitzvah you're doing after Havdalah? Pizza? I'm saying, what's the mitzvah? Going to the computer? That is the mitzvah. You understand? It's like Kiddush. What's the mitzvah you're doing after? Kiddush is the mitzvah. It is a mitzvah to make Havdalah. But the bracha is the mitzvah. It's not Birchas HaMitzvahs. And that's why it has a baruch in the beginning and a baruch at the end. So why did Ula was an Amoira? And the Brisa says every mitzvah has a beginning and an end with Baruch, besides a few exceptions. And Havdalah doesn't go into those exceptions. It's not smucha. What's a smucha?
It's right after,
First of all, even if it was samuch means you take out the Baruch in the beginning, not the Baruch at the end. He took out the Baruch at the end. Even if it was samuch, you take out the Baruch in the beginning.
So maybe that's the kasha.
No, so the Gemara answers, you mean that it's samuch to psamim and Moriya Eish. That's a good question. The Yerushalmi asks that. The answer to that is because you don't have to do psamim and Moriya Eish in the middle of Havdalah.
Oh, you could do it anything.
You could do it separate. Rabbi used to do it separate, Pizron. So therefore, it's not samuch necessarily. Amar lach Ula is going to answer, Amar lach, everything is part of a system. So it's shtakin of kedis in Yiddishkeit. Amar lach Ula, the right system. Amar lach Ula answers, Hanami kebirchas hamitzvahs damya. Havdalah is also like birchas hamitzvahs. What do I mean? Birchas hamitzvahs, my time. What's the reason birchas hamitzvahs you don't end mishum dahi? Because you're just saying thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to put on tefillin. Hanami haidahi. This is also a thank you. In other words, why do we make such a short bracha by birchas hamitzvahs and birchas hanen, and we don't make a baruch at the end? The answer is because it's a brief message. There's no elaboration, so it's enough to open up, and you don't have to end. Brachas that have an elaboration, for example, Kiddush. You speak about Shabbos, Yoitzer Oyer, Avodah Chayshach. You speak about the luminaries, and the sun, and the moon, and the malachim, and Kaddish, right? Zmiris Yamedu, Seshbachis Yashmiyu, Pearl Gvuris. It's a whole elaboration. Okay. The first blessing of Shmini Esrei, Gadol, Gibber, Noira, Gemel Chsadim Tovim, Zarech Chazdayavas. Again, it's Divrei Ritzu, Divrei Shvach, Divrei Tchin. It's a whole elaboration. So because you go off on a tangent, so to speak, not off, but you go off, so you finish also with Baruch Atah Hashem. Havdalah, since all you're saying is what? Baruch, blessed are you. You're thanking Hashem, Haidah, you're expressing gratitude, acknowledgement. Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chayil, according to Allah, and you don't add anything else like we do. So it has the same gather of Birchas HaMitzvos and Birchas HaPeiros, and therefore, you don't have to end with Baruch. Just to add, the Nitziv, the Mirei Mesada, the Nitziv, the Volozhin Yeshiva asks, he says, what was the question of the Gemara? According to Ula, it's such a short bracha, so you don't... Like, what's the state of the Brisa? The point of the Brisa is not Birchas HaMitzvahs, the point is it's short. So, according to Ula, Havdalah is short, so you don't finish with Baruch. Why did the Gemara have a question? So the Nitziv answers that the Gemara thought that it's Taka Birchas HaMitzvahs and Birchas HaPeiros. In other words, if it's a bracha before mitzvah or a bracha before you're enjoying something, those were made in a very brief fashion. The text was very brief, and therefore you don't need an ending. But the Gemara thought that other brachas, which are not part of Birchas HaMitzvahs and Birchas HaPeiros, do need an ending, and therefore, if you have to elaborate, you should elaborate. In other words, it's not that if it's a short bracha, it doesn't need an ending. The Gemara thought that what the Brisa means is Birchas HaMitzvahs doesn't need an ending. Birchas HaPeiros doesn't need an ending. All other brachas need an ending. So yes, it happens to be that Birchas HaMitzvahs could be short because it doesn't need an ending. But it's a din in Birchas HaMitzvahs and Birchas HaPeiros. But other brachas need an ending. So if you have to make it longer, make it longer. So Ula should make it longer. That's what the Gemara thought. So the Gemara says, no, that's not the point. You don't need that the bracha should have a closing and therefore you have to make it long. The point is that just like Birchas HaMitzvahs doesn't have an arichas, doesn't need a chsima, so therefore this also not. No, it's not a din that it has to be Birchas HaMitzvahs doesn't have a chsima. It's just a hechitimtza because it's not long. If Havdalah is not long, don't do a chsima. That's how the Nitziv teaches the Gemara.
Price was that Nitziv.
Okay.
The following explanation. I thought the Gemara would go into the direction where Kiddush and Havdalah is it's a type of a mitzvah which is a very rare thing, which is brocha is the mitzvah. There's nothing else there.
Right, but Kiddush, we do baruch at the end.
But there is no act. What I'm saying is there is no act. Like it's not like Alatilas.
Right. You're right. But the truth is, if you look in Tosfos, if you take a look in Tosfos on Kuf Hey Amud Aleph, you see Tosfos. Take a look at Tosfos Kuf Hey Amud Aleph Kashi L'Ula, right? So he does. Yeah, the first Tosfos Kashi L'Ula. You see, he gives his own way. The Chaim says like this: Lepirish hakuntris, the pirish le'el amar ella hamavdel ben kodesh l'chayil. Rashi says that Ula said hamavdel ben kodesh l'chayil v'suloi and nothing else. Kasha, ma'isol kedaitach the maksha. Why is the Gemara bothered? Hapshita the lebirchas hapedes damya. It's like a bracha on fruits. The ein l'chaktzara yoser mizu. You can't get a shorter bracha than baruch atah Hashem l'kein hamavdel ben kodesh l'chayil. What do you want from Ula? He's asking the same question. I don't see. Yeah. V'oid, lema the savar Ula Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Just say Ula holds like Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. The mashmanami the loy chasim. It seems like Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi also didn't have an ending because he would say Baruch Atah Hashem L'kein Melech Hamad B'Kar. So what do you want from Ula? Like you're saying Ula is contradicting a brisa. First of all, he's not contradicting a brisa. It's a short bracha. What do you want from him? It's like Birchas HaPeiros. Second of all, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was also a Tana. What do you want from Ula? And that's why Tosfos rejects Rashi's idea that Ula's Havdalah was like we thought. We thought Ula's Havdalah was Baruch Atah Hashem L'kein Melech Hamavdel ben Kodesh L'chayil. That's what we thought. That's how we teach the Gemara, because Rashi teaches the Gemara. V'nire the Ula Amar Nami Kol Shar Havdalas. Ula said all the Havdalas. Meaning Baruch Atah Hashem Hamavdel ben Kodesh L'chayil, L'chayil Yisrael Amim. And it could be he said all the 7 Havdalas. He said many Havdalas. Yeah. But ve'ishtik beloichsima, he became quiet, meaning he finished it off without an end. V'sol kedaitach the maksha kivan da ruchik tzas havalei lemichte bebaruch mid the hava kiddush chaysmen ba'afal gav da'idai kivan jesh baruch tzas. Just like kiddush, you're also thanking Hashem for Shabbos, but because it's an elaboration arichas, so you finish with baruch. Huh?
So then, wait, didn't finish.
Yeah. So B'meila, that's what he thought. Umeshani, so he answers the damya shapir lebirchas peiros. So he answers that what? That it's similar. It's similar enough to the bracha of fruits, where you don't still v'chein mashma, and it's mashma like this. It's mashma like this. Why? The Rabbi Yehuda loy haya shoyel. Ela leida im yachtem oikirav kishmuel. It's mashma. Why did Rabbi Yehuda send his son Rabbi Yitzchak to see the Havdalah? He wouldn't ask only because of one thing he really wanted to know. Abaye got. We learned how Abaye got upset on Rav's position. He wanted to know if the end is going to be like Rav Mekadesh Yisrael or like Shmuel Hamavdel ben Kodesh L'chayil. Because the Gemara tells the story right after the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. So it seems like that's what he wanted to know. He wanted to know how he's going to finish. Not how many Havdalas he's going to say. He knew that he's going to say many Havdalas. That wasn't the question. The question was the Chsima. So since the question was on the Chsima, so in Meil it's mashma that he said many Havdalas. So that's why the Gemara thought he has to finish with Baruch HaMavdel based on this brisa. Unlike Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who only did 1 Havdalah. Not like we thought that Ula did 1 Havdalah. Ula did many Havdalas. Not like Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. The only thing he deleted was the Baruch at the end. So this, the Gemara challenges him. The Brisa seems to say they have to have Baruch at the end. So that's the Chiddush of the Gemara that what? That Ula holds that it's Kebirchas HaMitzvahs. Why? Because it's an inyan of Haidah. And because it's an inyan of Haidah, and it's not that long, it's still pretty short. So mainly you could compare it to Birchas HaPeiros.
Very fascinating. So if according to Tosfos,
yeah,
the Rav wanted to find out what's the ending.
Yeah.
Isn't it the Rav who said that Mekadesh Yisrael?
Rav said Mekadesh Yisrael, and Rabbi Yehuda wanted to know what Ula is doing, because Rabbi Yehuda was a Talmud of Rav and Shmuel. Abaya later, now remember, Abaya would grow up, and he would be upset at the position of Mekadesh Yisrael. But Abaya is still now a young man, and from Ula he doesn't get an answer because Ula doesn't do an ending. So Ula deletes the ending. So we don't know what the ending is. So the point is like this: Kiddush is a longer bracha. The first bracha Shmini is a longer bracha. So therefore Ula ended with Baruch. But because Havdalah, even though it's somewhat, it has more text, it's still pretty short. He didn't feel you have to do a chasima. It's not like Kiddush. It's like Birchas HaPeiros and Birchas HaMitzvahs. Okay.
So Rabbi Yehuda was more Talmud of Rav or more Talmud of Shmuel, or he inherited both? Because the Rav and Shmuel...
He repeats always from Rav, but I think at the end he became the main Talmud of Shmuel.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.